any of the Indian corporate should have figured out to put in some form of an R&D. It could either been internal or it could have been external by participating in investing in startups, in deep technology or research, or it could have been even in making M&As and acquisitions. These are two great, I'm talking about, right? In India, M&A story is even, again, very bleak, right? You don't see startups getting acquired by any of the large corporates. Very hard. You'd see that in the US very easily, right? Like Cursor's acquisition with SpaceX, right? The scale of the acquisitions, even if you're a small startup, is still possible in the advanced market. Here, I think we wait for the companies to really go down and then acquire them at a pittance. And that's not going to help the ecosystem, right? Neither the founders is going to make any money, nor the VCs who have invested money and taken the risk are going to make anything out of it. So it doesn't create a virtuous cycle.
Hi, wherever you're joining me, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to India Tech Report, a podcast dedicated to chronicling and supporting the growth of India's deep tech and climate tech startup ecosystems, one conversation at a time. I'm Hari Arakli, and in today's episode, I'm joined by Vinod Shankar, co-founder and partner at Java Capital, a venture capital firm that has carved a unique space for itself by focusing on deep tech and climate technology. Vinod's journey is as specialized as his investments, moving from writing assembly code for mobile processors to leading a fund that backs moonshots in areas such as aerospace, silicon photonics, and advanced manufacturing. Vinod recently ignited a lively debate in the startup ecosystem with his provocative essay titled, "I Want India to Win, Just Not With My Money." He argues that India's path to becoming a developed nation is being hindered by sedimented wealth. For example, consider one data point he highlights. While India's wealthiest 1% controls some $11.6 trillion, nearly 60% of those assets are frozen in real estate and gold. In other words, not funding the future, he says. He also critiques India's largest corporations for being structurally allergic to R&D risk, noting that global giants such as Nvidia outspend the entire Indian corporate sector in a single quarter. In this conversation, we also talk about Java Capital's next fund, their third, targeting 400 crore rupees, and with their first close coming up soon, their stacking investment strategy, and Vinod's urgent call for India's ultra-rich investors to allocate 10% of their net worth to domestic deep tech to secure the future of this nation's technological sovereignty. Let's go. So, Vinod, thank you for making time to do this. Super thrilled to this time be, doing this conversation with you on my own podcast. And I want to say to our audience, the context is that you wrote a very thought-provoking essay a few weeks back. I think that caught the notice of a lot of people in the ecosystem about, especially on the funding side, the challenges that our deep tech entrepreneurs are facing, even though there is a massive pool of capital that is sitting, in your words, stagnating like sediment. Before we get to that, for folks who may not know about Java Capital and your focus on deep tech, maybe you can give us a quick snapshot about when you started it, what is the intention, bring us up to any recent interesting investments, and we'll go from there.
Hey, thanks, Arena. Personally, great that I'm doing this with you second time, in your own podcast the second time. As a VC, we're early to this ecosystem. I think you've been one of the journalists who were like one of the first ones, who figured out, the deep tech is the next big thing to take off in India. I think it's always a pleasure, listening to your podcast and also to doing this conversation second time again. And we watched a bunch of questions on this article. I'll just give a quick Java's introduction. Java Capital started in 2020. We started as an agnostic fund, but we've realized quickly that it's hard to compete against all the generalist funds across the country at that time. So we decided, where is our moat going to be? And just like any other startup, right, Java had to create its own moat. And that's when, we look back at what we did successfully, what were our successes in the past, what is our background. And then we decided to move towards deep tech and climate technologies in 2022. And we only did deep tech and climate technologies in our fund too. That turned out, to be a blessing in disguise. And also it ended up being a very passionate project. I as an engineer, and my teammates, learning climate, all that, kind of came together. And that's how Java ended up creating a reputation for doing deep tech and climate tech very early in the ecosystem. We also ran these climathons, marathon pitches for 3 years in a row. And that was also a great exercise, in telling the ecosystem that we are very serious about investing in deep tech and climate technologies. We are currently rolling our third fund. We hope to start making investments starting this quarter. We are excited about it. I think we are also aware of the fact that, like we predicted in 2024, like you said, there's a lot more competition in deep tech now than ever, because all VCs, generalists, everybody's trying to get into the deep tech ecosystem. So that means we'll have to play a much larger, significant role to differentiate ourselves once again, in the deep tech within deep tech now. In that sense, it's not just generalist versus specialist anymore. I think we're going to be like need to differentiate within the specialist itself. What is the value that we can give to our founders? What is the value that we can give to the ecosystem and to the larger society at large? I think that's going to become critical for all deep technology funds in the country now.
You've been an engineer, operator, marketer, investor, so over the years, and I think that sort of feeds into now as in your own VC firm. It's kind of holding you in good stead. Maybe you can give us a very quick snapshot from writing codexes and marketing just books to VC. Then we'll go from there.
I actually, in the last podcast, right, I thought you would capture it very, very aptly than anybody else could describe my career. And I sometimes use that summary to tell the world that, somebody just really understood what I've done in the last 20 years in less than a paragraph. As you said, right, started my career writing codecs for mobile processors. This was old Symbian Android early days. I think that is what keeps me today in a good state to understand deep tech, an ability to dive deep into a research paper and understand what goes one layer below in the deep tech stack, right? I think that keeps me in really good state, to understand algorithms. Two is I switched my careers to marketing simply because honestly, I was like tired of writing code in assembly and C at one point in time. I was not even writing at high level languages like Java and C. And I wanted to explore the world of entrepreneurship and business. And that's how I landed at Just Books as one of the earliest employees there. And I learned a lot of marketing and business development, which actually is critical. So, I mean, when I look back, right, I think that's a unique length I ended up putting for myself, I would say, like 5 years of writing code and doing algorithms, another 5 years of doing business development and marketing, traveling across the country, setting up these outlets, understanding each city, each locality when you set up an outlet, right? How to market that in a hyper local way. All those were like absolute nuances to learn in that sense, right? I think that feeds today into what I do when we market a position Just Books, for example, or how I tell my founders to put themselves out in the market, right? I think that marketing experience helps. The third one was largely, in between, Just Books and my Kalari stint. I did some consulting, including for Beehive. That's how I met my partner, Bhargavi. She was a consultant for Beehive. I was a consultant for Beehive in different domains. Today, Beehive is our office. So credit to them that they got us together. Sometimes the founder says, why don't we give some carry also? The Beehive founder, funnily enough. But I think that journey is what keeps keeping me unique to look at deep tech today. And the Kalari stint also helped me to understand what needs to be done to do a fund beyond just capital. What do you need to do? I think that combination, I actually, I'm very happy that I have that unique lens. And that lens is what I feel, will help us make unique investments and us to make unique investments.
You've done some really sort of multiple sectors, diverse but genuine deep tech investments through your first and second fund. I mean, I can think of Sangler in robotics, Kilo Aerospace in long duration UAVs, and Agnikul, I think, which is now really caught everybody's attention. Maybe you can give us.
I'll give you a couple of recent investments, right? We've done an investment called Lightspeed Photonics. Very, very interesting for us. I believe the current world where all the AI racking that's happening at a large scale, right? The copper interconnects cannot sustain themselves. And there will be a rollover to high speed communication requirement between processors, between racks, and the copper will not work because it doesn't have enough tolerance for heat, and you lose signal very quickly. Optical interconnects will become the future in the next 3 to 4 years, and we are already seeing signs of that. And lightspeed for us is a bet saying, the world will move towards optical interconnects very quickly, and in the next 3 to 4 years. And for us, lightspeed is one of the very interesting bets. Actually, across the entire silicon photonics value chain, from India, somebody is working on this is the only company. So we actually looked them multiple times and eventually decided to make an investment. So I'm super excited about Lightspeed Photonics as one of our recent investments. The other one I'm equally excited is a company called Sackler Labs. You might remember Operation Sindoor, right? During Operation Sindoor, there was this one challenge for our defense forces, wherein after the initial attack, the terrorists walked into bushes and these guys couldn't find out where they are because it's a thick forest, right? Nobody could find out where they went. If we had a solution like what Satlio is trying to build now, which is real-time thermal data availability, you cannot hide under the bushes because the thermal signatures of people or equipment, anything can be found out if the solution gets to certain level of stability. And that is an excitement which has dual use cases. It can be used in climate solutions. It can be used in defense dual use cases. All these cases, and also again from a thermal satellite thing, nobody is building it in India. It could be used to detect fires in forests. Sometimes I feel our stack is very interesting. I'll just give you a quick example of that. Right? Think Agnikul. Agnikul makes rockets. Satlio makes satellites, thermal satellites. We can use Agnikul to launch the thermal satellites. And the thermal data can be used by our other portfolio company called Resilience, which uses thermal data, optical data, SAR data, everything combined, and builds models saying, how resilient is a particular area or a city or a town. So our stacking is almost connecting the dots literally, right? So send satellites on Agnikul, use the data for resilience, and then provide the data to whoever wants to use, right? And I fundamentally think our job as we keep investing, right, it gets better because, we are able to connect the dots. And my job is like to try and connect as many dots as possible. If I can do that, I will find my next investment without as much as, throwing the net very, very wide open, frankly.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about this.
Yep.
It's really caught a lot of attention. Many people have commented. And so maybe just to read out one bullet point from what I read through, you've said, quote, the sediment of wealth. India's wealthiest 1% hold roughly 60% of their $11.6 trillion in wealth in real estate and gold. Okay. And you've described that as sediment because it's unproductive capital in terms of supporting innovation and inventions in this country. So maybe you could talk about what motivated you to write this essay in the first place. I mean, a lot of people have described it as frustration of a deep VC as well. Yeah.
I think partly frustration, no doubt. It is built up over a period of time. It was not written in like immediately. The draft itself was lying in the Google Doc for like almost 2 months. I had myself had reservations. Should I not? Those questions. I sent it for reviews to a few more people. But at the end of the day, I just realized one fine night, I think what is going to happen, dramatically, what is going to change. People are going to discuss. Maybe there will be a few people who will say, no, this is not correct, and this is not what should happen. I think all that is great. I think it will invoke at least discussions, and the intention itself was to provocate people, honestly, right? I mean, it was a provocative intent in the first place, right? So I'm not surprised, there is people who got provocated by that. What forced me to write is, I think, a series of things over the last 1 year, right? In multiple events, conversations that I've been to, right? Um, I've heard all these pieces in different forums. Let me put it, Hari. It is just that all of them came to me and said, "Look, this is a problem that we've not put together and spoken about. Each of us have been talking about one dimension. Somebody is talking about financialization, using SIP, and what's happening, that we are becoming like money earning money. That's one part of the story, right? And then money, government is trying to reduce your gold purchases, and we had the classic SGB, which they put out exactly to solve that problem, right? So you don't buy gold and buy bond, and you know how that turned out to be, right? In a sense, everything, somebody has experimented each of these pillars that I've explored in that article, right? And couple of these round tables that I did, I think it just provoked me to say, look, this has to be put together, and that was a kind of starting point to put this article together. Yeah, some thoughts over the years, last 1 year. I think the deep tech frustration also, it stems from the fact that it's not like we don't have capital, right? uh, it is, we have capital, but we are chasing to try and just make money out of money, and not necessarily betting it for the long term story. We talk about it, but I think then we forget about it very quickly, and then go back and do what we usually do. And that is why I said, was, if you are telling me that the country's flag has to fly high, and that can't be only a slogan during an Independence Day or a Republic Day slogan, right? You have to put your capital or money where your mouth is, or where your aspirations are. You can't just like collectively aspire that I want India to be a great country, but I will not do much about it, and I will not even risk 10% of my capital, right? I think that is where I just wanted to tell people, 10% is not that you're going to risk a lot, especially if you're HNIs and wealthy, right? You could afford to take a 10% risk, right? And I mean, I would honestly admit I take more than 10% of risk with my capital by putting money in startups, which I've done all through my career, right? Like, I've been an angel investor since 2013. And I did that, when my net worth was nothing also. I would have probably put like 30%, 40% at a point in time. And probably that I mean, it might be my risk appetite, but I'm saying, even any wealth manager advises, to expose 10 to 15%. I'm only advocating the same thing, saying, put this 10% into real innovation, so that, the country can progress and the society can progress along with it. Yeah.
Jumping to the deep tech ecosystem, I can ask you to talk about corporate R&D, which obviously is a very important factor in the advanced economies, in the way they are very deeply integrated with the startup ecosystems, and that's how those startups succeed as well in the long run. So walk us through that. In India, what are you seeing today that still disappoints you? And maybe if there are any sort of positive trends also that you're coming across, corporate R&D, and then we can talk about the funding gap and so on.
I think the framing there, right? I think there's been a lot of debate in the last 2 years on social media, given that fable and mythos was cut off, right? That also has got the same angle. People telling the Indian IT services companies did not invest in innovation, right? So yeah, I'm of the view. I'm not saying it is only the Indian IT services. It is anybody who's able to generate a significant amount of cash flows in corporate India. I think they have an obligation to the society, put a portion of that in R&D, not necessarily only in IT services. I'm not even of the view to say that the IT services companies should have innovated. I'm not even telling that. I'm saying a portion of the spend could have gone for internal R&D, or it could have gone to doing investing in startups or external R&D, right? I'm not saying that services companies should have invented LLMs in India, right? I think that's a stretch of an argument. I'm only saying a portion of capital, any of the Indian corporate should have figured out to put in some form of an R&D. It could either been internal or it could have been external by participating in investing in startups, in deep technology or research, or it could have been even in making M&As and acquisitions. These are two great, I'm talking about, right? In India, M&A story is even, again, very bleak, right? You don't see startups getting acquired by any of the large corporates. Very hard. You'd see that in the US very easily, right? Like Cursor's acquisition with SpaceX, right? The scale of the acquisitions, even if you're a small startup, is still possible in the advanced market. Here, I think we wait for the companies to really go down and then acquire them at a pittance. And that's not going to help the ecosystem, right? Neither the founders is going to make any money, nor the VCs who have invested money and taken the risk are going to make anything out of it. So it doesn't create a virtuous cycle. It rather creates, lower returns, and then more money is not going to come into the ecosystem, right? That's what's going to happen. I think acquisitions and R&D investments have not happened. I think good things now happening. I mean, you would have seen Servam getting like $150 million from HCL is a great sign. I actually tweeted saying HCL Jai Ho in a way. I have a feeling the corporates are taking notice. For example, the Bajaj Group, Sanjeev Bajaj announced a 5,000 crore investment in R&D in AI along with IIT Bombay. I saw, I think Adani announced and met deep tech startups in the last week. I mean, I'm reading these as, all as good omens. Uh, uh, Not necessarily a consequence of this article, but I think probably all of these were already in their thinking, which is good, which is great actually, I would say, right? And with all the noise around mythos and fable now, I have a feeling people will wake up and do a lot more than what's been done before. I think that exactly was what, in my view, some of the provocation was for. And I'm hoping it conveys. And interestingly, there's an article by the chief economic advisor on June 12th. Interestingly, I could see threads of that even in that article, talking about how our trading mentality didn't allow us to think about investing in R&D. And he also talks about all this is fine. Eventually, his conclusion is also that all this is fine, but we still have to do this R&D. There is no escaping from the system of that, right? You should read that piece, and I also would suggest the viewers to read that piece as a follow-up to what I have written. I just feel optimistic that all of this will move. It's not like I'm the one who just got provoked and written this. I think people have written it in the past. It's just that it has not had like any movement. Now we are hoping there will be movement with the government. See, the government has also been putting money, right? I wouldn't like the RDI fund is a phenomenal size, right? We're talking of 1 lakh crores for deep tech. Apart from that, we have the National Quantum Mission, National Semiconductor Mission. Um, all these put together, we are talking like at least 1.5 lakh crore to 2 lakh crores across these plays, right? And the ANRFs fund for grants itself, right? That's another story. I think the government is woken up. So that is why you don't see in my article, there is no mention of any criticality on the government because they put all these in action. I mean, we'll have to wait and see where it leads to, but at least that is in action, right? So I have not been like critical about it because they put something in action. Now, if the corporates put something in action, I think, that's a great outcome for all the provocation, in my view.
So when I asked you about trends, do you see these massive conglomerates in India? Do you see them stepping up their investments in R&D as a proportion of their revenue? So do you also see these groups proactively looking to partner with real deep tech startups in India, so who are actually attempting to build these frontier technologies?
I think it's happening to some extent, but not to the extent that I think it should happen. I feel still. There are a few groups that you mentioned, right? They are getting into defense production, which is more like tech transfer from another country, and then getting into production, which is slightly easy. I mean, there's like tech transfer, but it's not like you're innovating it right here still, right? So that piece is still to be figured out, especially. Uh, there are a few of them working. My challenge still would be that how many of them. Frankly, I think you were just going to count them very easily. Hari. I think that is where the problem is. Will the mindset shift happen quickly? I doubt it. But should it happen? Yes. And one way for that I keep thinking is there is always status quo. If something has to change, right? Something has to break. Where is this breaking point going to come for some of the large conglomerates or the existing large production economy companies, right? I'm calling them as production economy companies, like investing in the past, not the future. There should be one or two disruptors who will come, which will make them, their survival questioned. I think that's when they'll move much more faster. till such an event happens, it's always going to be like, I will survive by making an incremental adjustment or an incremental innovation or a progress, not something path breaking or disruptive, which can only happen. Like, let's take this, let's go back to the e-commerce example. Harry. If you look at Big Basket got disrupted by a Zepto. It is fourth in its market share now. So that's like a classic case, right? So they only thought about online dark store quick delivery after like 6 to 8 months. They just said that's not possible because they thought they have done this model forever, right? So it's like innovators' dilemma in that question. We need some of our deep tech companies to show that, look, we are creating value, be it like Skyroot or be it an Agnico, who are probably at the forefront of, in terms of valuation, right? Them listing and capturing a massive shares of the future economies, right? I think that's when, some of these elephants will wake up, right? I think an article will probably not do the job. Something tangible will wake up. But I'm sure SpaceX, looking at SpaceX valuation and that, right, that also should have woken up where the future is headed. And also the Indian capital itself is saying, I want to invest in companies like SpaceX, right? But if you create something in India, what they do is my fundamental question. They're chasing money is going out, which again the government has a problem because forex problem. So if you create attractive, innovative companies out of here, I think some of these retail folks also would be interested here. I feel it's just that we don't have them at this stage. That's it. The innovative dilemma should kick in, and some of them will wake up. Is my view. On their own, will they wake up? I doubt it. I have my doubts.
Mm. Fair enough. Okay. So the other point that I wanted to ask you about is circling back to the funding side of it and the funding gap, in which you've spoken about outsourcing equity ownership to foreign investors because domestic LPs are not yet supporting bigger levels of funding for startups here. And incidentally, a recent conversation with the partners at Idea Spring Capital, they also, Naganan and Suri, were talking about how we have a bad Series A problem in India because it's at a level where local ecosystems not stepping up, and they went so far as to say that we can at least welcome foreign investors, but they're also kind of fence sitting because at that critical stage they're not very sure of whether an India domiciled startup can succeed, and they probably don't have enough of a influence in their process. So I thought I'll ask you about this and get your views on this.
I think it's a fair concern. I think all of us have been having in the deep tech ecosystem. I think the early stage is kind of sorted with bunch of players now, and there's a lot more interest. I think the very next stage is where the problem has been. The other interesting point to note, also, Hari, I saw that, the recent exits of all the companies that are getting listed, right? Be it Zepto, Grow, and all that. Just take a look at how much of money multiples is all made by foreign LT. I'm not saying, we don't need their capital. We need more capital. There is no doubt about it. But if the same companies had enough Indian capital also, that would have created the virtuous cycle that I've been telling again and again, right? If you've not got returns, how are you going to create the virtuous cycle, right? So if the foreign LPs are making money, we are just hoping that they will come back to the market. But they coming back to the market is not, it is like me sitting in a house and willing to improve the house is a very different thing. And then asking somebody to give me a loan and do it, right? They view that as multiple parameters to give me the money, right? Back again. So if we have our own capital, if we have made money, we're very likely that, we'll go back and put that money back without thinking too much. I wouldn't think about currency risks. I wouldn't think about so many macros because my money is here. I would put that. So our investors in India, domestic institutions, family offices have to invest and make their money to put back money again in the virtuous cycle, right? I think that is the only difference of opinion that I have on that. Otherwise, foreign money, we need it. The Series A issue, I am hoping with the government's RDI process going through, that should hopefully get sorted. And hopefully there'll be a lot of VCs, who will do the Series A's.
Mm.
I'm hoping that will get kind of sorted, I see. Because where is the choice, to deploy that kind of capital, right? So you are going to look at the companies that we've all already invested, some of them. Hopefully they'll all get capital and they'll get to do a lot more. That's the hope, at least, as of now, for the Series A plus up to like B. I think after BC, there is this money which is chasing the revenues and all that. And that money is available in some sense. The growth capital, right? Once you're established your revenue model and a business model, I think that money seems to come from anywhere, from private equity to some of the Indian large PE players also will start putting in money, I feel. Yeah, once revenue is visible.
Mm. Yeah, on the RTI fund, I want to ask you, uh, is the government stipulating any conditions in terms of how you as a VC investor can use the money? I mean, do they say you can only put it in early stage deep tech, or can you, for example, put it in a Series C or Series B?
Yeah.
How does that work?
I think the government is clearly defined not by series, by technology readiness levels.
Mm.
Any money that you get from RDIF fund, you have to raise an equivalent. Uh, let's say RDI gives you 100 rupees. You, as a VC, you have to raise another 100 rupees. And that has to go into deep technology companies which are TRL 4 and above. So
Okay.
they've defined that portion very clearly. So the TRL is the filter for where you put money, and it also creates crowd in. I can't take RDI money and assume that I can invest everything in deep tech, right? Then I'm only a deep tech fund is possible to do like that. If there are generics, then I could only take a little more and then crowd in a little more. I think the government's intent is, I will give you the first capital, you bring in more capital, and then invest in TRL 4 plus companies. And also they've specifically defined what is deep tech, which are some of the areas that are priority areas, like be it some quantum, semiconductor, anywhere there is clearly innovation. I think all that has got like very well defined. So it is pretty well defined, most of the definitions of where the money should go in.
And in your article, you've called for a 10% allocation from the ultra affluent in the
Yeah.
country. Uh, so let's say that happens,
Mm.
or even a significant portion of that happens.
Mm.
Uh, so what would that mean? I mean, give us a sense of what would be the most optimistic scenario in that case.
I think the first thing that will happen is the multiplier effect on number of startups that we can do in deep technologies, first thing.
Mm.
So today, if we are taking, there are, I think, 4,500 to 5,000 deep tech startups in the country today. Can that become quickly, like, if you're talking the wealth in real estate and gold we spoke, right? That's about $11 trillion. Imagine 10% of that. We're talking $1 trillion. Just the rough number, not even taking all the other wealth picture.
Yeah.
Even if we hit like, we're talking, let's say 500 billion. That's the kind of number. The government has put 12 billion. I'm talking 500 billion here. That's a massive number. Even a small percentage, if that gets into the deep tech, right? Number of experiments that we can run at the earlier stages goes up dramatically. I think why does the US win? What we are not seeing the other side, I feel always is we are only seeing the winners. I'm saying for every Anthropic, there would have been like 100 other people who tried to do an Anthropic. For every SpaceX, there are other 100 companies who tried to do launch vehicle. I think we are not able to that many number of experiments and ability to lose capital, which is the nature of the power law, as I said. If you put like 20 companies, you're going to get two, right? The, if our number of experiments scale up by investing in these at the earlier stages, then automatically our success chances will go up, because that is how it works, right? The more experiments you do, your probability itself goes up. So that is a call for capital to say, do willing to put more risk capital and do more experiments. That is number one. Two, a similar company in India gets very, very low valuation. And of course, you get a talent commensurate to the compensation in that sense, right? An equivalent company in the US is able to raise 100 times more capital in the same space, even if they come late to the market, right? That means we have, we need a lot more capital to bridge the talent mechanisms. There are other problems that we have to deal with. We are not even going there, infrastructure and others. I'm saying amount of capital to experiment, a number of experiments that somebody can do and afford to have the best talent to go there, right? All that becomes enabled if even a small percentage of the wealth gets deployed. I'm just talking of just two aspects. There's like a lot more that can go up.
Yeah. And also the timing and the time it takes, both the timing and the time it takes to raise money, right? In the US, even just anecdotally, I know that robotics companies are raising tens of million dollars, hundreds of millions dollars, literally in quick succession.
Actually that is a thing I have in mind. You take our company like Schindler, they probably raised about 24, 25 million over the last 6 years, 7 years.
Yeah.
An equivalent company which started in 2022 after ChatGPT got released, called Figure, is raised 500 million.
Yeah.
If you ask me to look at both of them, right, in my eyes, these guys had a head start. They needed more capital, but they got quick $500 million of capital. Like, we have the same talent. We could have built this. We could have done a lot more. But capital is where sometimes also is a problem, right? So you need capital. Talent is there. We can. And the person who working on Figure will be like hundreds of Indian engineers only again, right?
Yeah.
They are doing the same thing, right? I mean, you look at Anthropic, right? The CTO and the CFO are folks of Indian origin, right? So that's this. See, I'm not even touching the systemic problem. Now you're trying to get to the systemic problem. The article's biggest critic has been people responding and telling me that was there is so much systemic problem, and you are telling me to do all this, right? Look, that's what I see. Look, I can't address the systemic problem. I can only stick to the thing. I thought the systemic problem. You bring it back to road infrastructure and taxation and policy and bureaucracy. I mean, that's a different subject altogether. Systemic problems, somebody has to listen to it also, right? Why does Anthropic CTO sit in the US and why not here? Which Sridhar is trying to figure out a way, right? Like, I mean, I meet people, like yesterday also I spoke to two people who are my LPs. One of them is already relocated to the Middle East despite all the crisis. And another one is contemplating relocating to the Middle East despite the crisis, right? So in my mind, people want a peaceful, well-lived life. Seems like once you make money, right, people aspire for that. If once you made enough riches, people aspire for that. And I think as a nation, we've not done that well. And it's a systemic problem, which we don't know when it will get addressed, how long will it take that to address. So I've not even gone there. I'm just keeping myself away and out of the systemic issues that needs to be addressed in that sense.
Mm. So I guess it sort of again it rolls over into the cultural aspects of how we are, how we grow up, and all of that. I mean,
Yes.
Elon Musk. I mean, let's leave aside all the craziness in his personal life. Same with Jeff Bezos. I mean, sitting here in India, we can probably not relate to, or we can't figure out what's going on in what looks to us to be like a really messy personal life. But as entrepreneurs, I think th- that part of it, I think, is a cultural thing, right? How they grew up, what they were exposed to,
Yes.
ability to take risks and fail and go after absolutely crazy ideas without worrying about now what happens. And the thing is that they are continuing to do it. Not that after they've become like ultra billionaires, they've stopped. I mean, Jeff Bezos is still raising billions of dollars for another AI company. Is investing in robotics even more. So yeah.
My other
So
call to arms, because you bring up both Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, right? I keep telling if you're a second time entrepreneur in India, if you've made enough capital, I don't think so. You should go and do another simple consumer internet business. You should take moonshots because you've made enough capital, right? You should be doing what Elon Musk was doing to some extent. What Dipinder is doing of Zomato, right? I think I love that. He's done one successful business. He's a chairman, but he's taking his shots at moonshots now, which is exactly I feel people should do if you're a second time entrepreneur. Go after moonshots. Do things which what Elon Muskish thinks I would call it as, which doesn't happen. On the cultural aspect, and another friend called up after this article, he was telling I mean, I also share that views. We are a very collectivist society, and we've been brought up like that. We are like so close to people, and that's the thing. And failure is looked down upon still. And US is more an individualistic society, and they have gone their individual ways, and that is how it's evolved as a society, also, right? That could be one of the reasons. But my view still has been that we can't keep saying the same thing and be sitting on it. We have to do something about it. We have to break out of it. And interestingly, in the 2024-25 economic survey, uh, the CE again mentions in the preface of the article, uh, we've been colonized and we've been traders for a really long time. That means we were suppressed in both our aspirations and ambitions. And that is how all our society has been, over the years, right? Even after 60, 70 years, right? And he also makes one very interesting statement. If there is one city which is broken out of that and has created a very cosmopolitan view, and which has broken those narratives which the colonial oppression and the trading mentality, is Bangalore. And and I just keep thinking about it all the time to say, look, we will need so many more uh, melting pots like Bangalore if we have to do innovation. The ability to absorb newer things, newer ideas has to be there. Cultural aspect and this open to society thing, and I think that what leads to innovation. That is why Bangalore is like the heartbeat of the Indian innovation ecosystem. Whatever said and done, can somebody do this again and again? How do you create a Boston? How do you create another uh, innovation places of ecosystem? It has to happen. It will only come by accepting people from all over the country. It cannot happen in isolation in like that currently we have, right? It's a very, very like, this is my city, my state, this is my advantage, right? I think Bangalore has broken those barriers. That is an acknowledgement, the city and the city's capability, honestly. Nowhere else it's happened in India.
Mm, mm. I want to ask you, as we begin to wrap up, one comment someone made, and I apologize to the person who made that comment because I'm not able to immediately recall his name. Uh, he said, even with the existing capital, what is the share of VC money that actually goes into deep tech as you look at the overall sort of VC landscape in India? Not just specifically deep tech focused firms like yours, but if you look at all the VC firms, that overall landscape, and I think it's a valid point, he's pointing out that even with the money that is there, you guys are not putting a bigger share into deep techs. Do you think that's a well taken point?
Yeah. See, I think we should go back to the 2024 point, right? Like that you mentioned earlier in this conversation. There were only 10 deep tech VCs in my view in 2024 who were seriously doing early stage, and they were all hitting growth stage hurdles in all our companies, right? So only in the last year, I think there's been a interesting uptick in capital going into deep tech. And actually it's gone up. It's gone up significantly. I have to check the exact number. I think it is one of the highest ever in the Indian ecosystem. That last year's capital in deep tech has been high. That is partly coming also because of the signaling that's been happening from the government, and especially the Piyush Goyal's conversation, the minister's conversation in Makum, saying, we are investing in ice creams. I think that kind of ticked off a lot of people. And the government is also saying this is the money. And people are chasing the money also, right? So the risk money is also coming from the government. So people are saying, I'm also deep tech now. And that will only increase. I am absolutely okay if this creates a little bubbly environment on deep tech. I think that is required. More investments will happen and more people will learn about deep tech investing, and that automatically create more investments, I feel. So it is increasing now. It's now, I think the gentleman's point is valid. It was not the case before. It's only increasing now.
Okay, so let's end with bringing it back to Java Capital and your own plans. You're currently raising your third fund.
Yes.
And I saw some headlines. We're
looking to raise a 400 crore fund focused only on deep tech and climate technology companies. We plan to do anywhere between 18 to 20 companies. We'll do a first check of, say, about 6 to 8 crores, and then keep the rest for follow-ons. That's the intention, to go deep and work with these companies to take them to the next stage after we make the first check. And that's the intent at this stage. Yeah.
What's a rough timeline to a first close or a final close?
Yeah, I would say we are very close to the first close, and we've started building the pipeline. People are writing to us already, and we are building the pipeline of the next set of companies to invest. So yeah, so we should make a couple of investments this year. Then about on average of 5 to 6 investments over the next 3 years. That's the rough deployment cycle that we are planning for this.
So typically when VCs announce a first close, they would have targeted what 30, 40%?
Usually about 1/3 of the corpus usually gets going. Usually, that's what I think we also do roughly around that.
And as you focus on genuine deep tech companies, what kind of sectors would you now include, and also in terms of the type of moonshots that you will want to back, just give us a sense of what you're looking at.
Yeah. See, I'll tell you what we've already covered well. We've covered aerospace, we've covered space, we've covered a bit of an energy and energy transition companies. These are covered in the previous funds for us. Newer areas that we are starting to look interesting is drug discovery, quantum, not exactly compute, but allied areas. We are even interested in picks and shovels of space tech now. Because when we did the previous fund, right, we had 20, 30 companies. Now we have 300 companies. So picks and shovels becomes interesting to look at now. We have like an ecosystem of activities that's going on. We're looking at advanced manufacturing, alternate materials. These are advanced, of course, dual use case in defense and civilian use cases, right? Those are newer 5 areas that we put together for ourselves to look at. For example, we published one thesis on use of AI in drug discovery. I think that was very well taken. And, where people wrote back to us, a lot of those companies came back to us. The AI's impact on some of the hardware companies also will be interesting to watch out. That's an area that again we want to, for example, designing an aeroplane or a space part, right, could become very, very easier. Like one of our companies called Urja does physics informed neural networks. How will AI impact that? Make the cycles much, much quicker. And I think the impact of AI will translate into a lot of deep technology companies also, because of the requirement of massive processors. All those ancillaries, right, will start looking very, very interesting to do deep tech there also. Some frontier areas, moonshots, plus our space tech, and what we've done consistently, we would continue to do the aerospace, space tech, advanced manufacturing. Those we would continue to do that.
That's it for this conversation. You'll find the links to Vinod's bio, his essay, and Java Capital's website in the show notes. I'd be grateful if you support my work by subscribing to my newsletter and sharing this episode with your friends. I'm Hari Hartley. Thank you for joining me.